What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my DFS picks for MLB Tuesday, April 26th.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon.
so you don't miss our new videos.
In this video, I'm going to go over my top DFS picks for today's MLB slate.
And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made.
Okay guys, we have an 11-game slate tonight, and we're now using this season's stats, so the stats from 2022, this current MLB season. We're now using those stats in the Draft Dashboard. There's been enough games to get enough data to start using those stats, but we still do like the last 2-year average for the OPS numbers so that we have a bigger sample size on those OPS numbers versus lefty, righty switch hitters. So that makes a lot of sense to use the 2-year numbers, but you can see like the fantasy points per game are now from this season. So Carlos Rodon has pitched for 3 games and he's averaging 49 fantasy points per game for this season. So it is helpful to see this season's stats so you know what these players are doing right now. So let's get into these picks. The first pitcher that I like is Carlos Rodon, and he's got a huge pitching advantage here over the Oakland Athletics. Carlos Rodon only giving up a .466 OPS versus lefties and a .473 OPS versus righties, facing 3 lefties and 6 righties. And the Athletics have only hit 1 of his last 12 pitches. Now that's a small sample size, but he has fantastic splits here tonight. And Carlos Rodon is $11,100 FanDuel salary. He's $1,000 less on DraftKings. He's averaging 49 fantasy points per game on the season, and he scored 45, 55, and 48 fantasy points in his first 3 games. Has an ERA of 1.06. Record is 2-0, pitching an average of 91 pitches per game. And Vegas thinks this is going to be a super low scoring game here. They have the over-under at 6.5 runs scored in this game. So I like Carlos Rodon here versus the Oakland Athletics. Now, although this is a good batting team, just like we had yesterday, or the day before, I forget, but the pitcher versus batter stats here are great. And the splits are pretty decent as well. So I like Kevin Gausman with a 5% pitching advantage over the Boston Red Sox. Kevin Gausman giving up a .525 OPS versus lefties and a .670 OPS versus righties, facing 3 lefties and 6 righties. And on top of that, the reason that I like this pick is because the Red Sox have only hit 28 of his last 138 pitches. That's a .203 batting average and a huge sample size. Kevin Gausman is $10,200 FanDuel salary, $1,500 less on DraftKings, averaging 38 fantasy points per game on the season, has an ERA of 2.89, record is 1-1, pitching an average of 84 pitches per game. So I like Kevin Gausman here versus the Boston Red Sox. Now, if you're looking to save some salary, here's a lower salary pitcher that I think's got pretty good upside in this matchup. Take a look at Max Fried. He's got a 14% pitching advantage here over the Chicago Cubs. Max Fried only giving up a .563 OPS versus righties, and he's facing 8 righties here tonight. And the Cubs have hit 8 of his last 20 pitches. That's a .400 batting average, but that is a small sample size. Max Fried is $8,500 FanDuel salary, $500 more on DraftKings, averaging 31 fantasy points per game on the season, has an ERA of 3.5, record is 1-2, and he's pitching an average of 85 pitches per game. So I like Max Fried here versus the Chicago Cubs. Okay, let's take a look at the catcher first base position. I like Matt Olson with a 5% batting advantage over a low salary pitcher, Marcus Stroman. Matt Olson batting 16% better versus righty pitchers, batting a 1.030 OPS versus righties. And Marcus Stroman, he's giving up a .704 OPS versus lefties. And I like this pick because Matt Olson is 2 for 3 with a .667 batting average and a 1.667 OPS versus Stroman. Now that is a small sample size, but I also like the splits. Even though Marcus Stroman does pitch his best ball versus lefty batters, Matt Olson has been crushing righty pitchers with that big 1.030 OPS versus righties. And Matt Olson is 3,700 FanDuel salary, 800 more on DraftKings, averaging 12 fantasy points per game on the season. And he has a batting average of 355. So I like Matt Olson here versus Marcus Stroman. I also like Nathaniel Lowe with a 50% batting advantage over a low salary pitcher, Jake Odorizzi. Nathaniel Lowe batting 17% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .887 OPS versus righties. Jake Odorizzi pitches his worst ball versus lefty batters, 33% worse than his other pitches, giving up a 1.042 OPS versus lefties. And Nathaniel Lowe has hit 3 of his last 8 pitches versus Odorizzi, batting a 375 batting average and a 1.125 OPS. Nathaniel Lowe is 3,400 FanDuel salary, 200 more on DraftKings. So I like that price on both sites. And he's averaging 10 fantasy points per game on the season. And Nathaniel Lowe currently has a batting average of 381. So I like Nathaniel Lowe here versus Jake Odorizzi.
Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching. If you want to enter the drawing for $25 PayPal, all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won. And we'll send you $25 PayPal. So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you.
Okay, let's take a look at the second base position. I like Jazz Chisholm Jr. with a 72% batting advantage over Josiah Gray. Jazz Chisholm Jr. is batting 46% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .979 OPS versus righties. Josiah Gray pitching his worst ball versus lefty batters, 26% worse than his other pitches, giving up a .998 OPS versus lefties. Now, Jazz Chisholm Jr. is only 1 for 6 versus Gray, but I love those splits. I think the splits more than make up for that to the not good start versus Gray for Jazz Chisholm Jr. He's 3,900 FanDuel salary, 1,400 more on DraftKings, averaging 16 fantasy points per game on the season, has a batting average of 295. So I like Jazz Chisholm Jr. here versus Josiah Gray. Now, here is a value play. Take a look at Danny Mendick with an 87% batting advantage over Daniel Lynch. Danny Mendick is batting 35% better versus lefty pitchers, batting a 1.108 OPS versus lefties. Daniel Lynch pitching 52% worse to righties as he does lefties, giving up a .852 OPS versus righties. And Danny Mendick is 1 for 2 with a 2.5 OPS versus Lynch, because that one hit was a home run. And I like this pick because the splits are great. And Danny Mendick is only $2,100 FanDuel salary, $400 more on DraftKings, averaging 7 fantasy points per game on the season with a batting average of .286. So I like Danny Mendick here versus Daniel Lynch. I also like Thairo Estrada with a 73% batting advantage over Dalton Jeffries. Thairo Estrada batting 52% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .845 OPS versus righties. Dalton Jeffries pitching 22% worse to righties as he does lefties, giving up a .631 OPS versus righties. He's $3,100 FanDuel salary, $1,800 more on DraftKings, so I prefer that FanDuel price, averaging 11 fantasy points per game on the season, has a batting average of .258. So I like I like Thairo Estrada here versus Dalton Jeffries. Another value play, this is more of a FanDuel value play. I like Jonathan Villar with a 28% batting advantage over Max Fried. Jonathan Villar batting a .684 OPS versus lefties. And the reason I like this pick is because Max Fried pitches his worst ball versus switch hitters, 41% worse than his other pitches. So although Max Fried is in a good spot here tonight, I think this is the one batter that has excellent splits, the one switch hitter he's facing. And Jonathan Villar is 4 for 11 with a .364 batting average and a .909 OPS versus Fried. So Jonathan Villar is only $2,500 FanDuel salary. He is $1,700 more on DraftKings, but I love that FanDuel price, averaging 10 fantasy points per game on the season. He has a batting average of .341. So I like Jonathan Villar here versus Max Fried. Okay, let's take a look at the third base position. I like Joey Wendell with a 25% batting advantage over Josiah Gray. Joey Wendell batting a .07 OPS versus righties. Josiah Gray pitching his worst ball versus lefty batters, giving up a .998 OPS versus lefties. Joey Wendell is only $2,600 FanDuel salary, $1,500 more on DraftKings, averaging 9 fantasy points per game on the season, has a batting average of .341. So I like Joey Wendell here versus Josiah Gray.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to DraftDashboard. You can try all of our DFS tools for all sports. You can try the Position Optimizer, where you can see the top players ranked for each position. And we added a new Player Trends tool, where you can see the top salary differences between FanDuel and DraftKings. It's a really good tool to help you pick out value for the site that you're playing on. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Okay, who do we have at the shortstop position? I like Xander Bogaerts with a 39% batting advantage over Kevin Gausman. So if you're not going to play Kevin Gausman, I like this pick. Xander Bogaerts is batting 17% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .908 OPS versus righties. Kevin Gausman pitching 22% worse to righties as he does lefties, giving up a .670 OPS versus righties. And I like this pick because Xander Bogaerts is 14 for 43, batting a .326 batting average and a .798 OPS versus Gausman. He's $3,600 FanDuel salary, $1,100 more on DraftKings, averaging 9 fantasy points per game on the season, has a batting average of .344, so I like Xander Bogaerts here versus Kevin Gausman. Now, I think this guy is a steal on FanDuel. He's priced way up on DraftKings, but take a look at Bo Bichette. He doesn't have good splits here. He is batting a .667 OPS versus righties. Nick Pivetta is giving up a .772 OPS versus righties. But what I like about this pick is the batter versus pitcher matchup. Bo Bichette is 8 for 17, batting a .471 batting average and a 1.441 OPS versus Pivetta. 2 of those 8 hits are for home runs. He's only $3,100 FanDuel salary. He is $2,000 more on DraftKings, so I love that FanDuel price. Averaging 8 fantasy points per game on the season. Now, he only has a batting average of .219. He's struggling a little bit so far this season, but he's just got a great matchup here versus Pivetta in terms of this batter versus pitcher stats. So it looks like he might be able to see the ball pretty well versus this pitcher. So I like Bo Bichette here versus Nick Pivetta. Okay, moving on to the outfield position. I like Mike Trout with a 43% batting advantage over Tristan McKenzie. Mike Trout batting 32% better versus righty pitchers, batting a 1.228 OPS versus righties. Tristan McKenzie pitching his worst ball versus righty batters, giving up a .674 OPS versus righties. No at-bats versus McKenzie yet, and Mike Trout is $4,400 FanDuel salary, $1,800 more on DraftKings, averaging 14 fantasy points per game on the season with a batting average of .326. So I like Mike Trout here versus Tristan McKenzie. I also like Jock Peterson with a 6% batting advantage over Dalton Jeffries. Jock Peterson batting 27% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .955 OPS versus righties. Now, Dalton Jeffries is only giving up a .493 OPS versus lefties, so the splits are good on the batter side, not so good on the pitcher side, but Jock Peterson is only $3,200 FanDuel salary and only $800 more on DraftKings, and he's been on fire, averaging 14 fantasy points per game on the season, scored 25, 50, and 10 fantasy points in the last 3 games, with a batting average of .362. So I like Jock Peterson here versus Dalton Jeffries. I also like Marcell Ozuna with a 27% batting advantage over the low-salary pitcher Marcus Stroman. Marcell Ozuna is batting 16% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .772 OPS versus righties. Marcus Stroman pitching 11% worse to righties as he does lefties, giving up a .787 OPS versus righties. And Marcell Ozuna is 1 for 2 with a 2.5 OPS because that one hit was a home run. And he's only $3,000 FanDuel salary, $500 more on DraftKings. So I like that price on both sites, but especially on DraftKings. And he's averaging 10 fantasy points per game on the season, has a batting average of .273. So I like Marcell Ozuna here versus Marcus Stroman. Another value play here, I like Seth Beer with a 48% batting advantage over Tony Gonsolin. Seth Beer batting 27% better versus righty pitchers. He's batting a 1.325 OPS versus righties. Tony Gonsolin pitching his worst ball versus lefty batters, 22% worse than his other pitches, giving up a .707 OPS versus lefties. Seth Beer is $2,600 FanDuel salary, $800 more on DraftKings, averaging 8 fantasy points per game on the season, and he has a batting average of .326. So I like Seth Beer here versus Tony Gonzalez. I also like Cody Bellinger batting against Zach Davies. Cody Bellinger batting 10% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .715 OPS versus righties. Zach Davies giving up a .756 OPS versus lefties. But I like this pick because Cody Bellinger is 6 for 17, batting a .353 batting average and a 1.127 OPS versus Davies. 2 of those 6 hits are home runs, and he's $3,300 FanDuel salary and $100 less on DraftKings. So I love that DraftKings price. Averaging 11 fantasy points per game on the season, has a batting average of .254. So I like Cody Bellinger here versus Zach Davies. Now I also like Jesus Sanchez with a 69% batting advantage over Josiah Gray. Jesus Sanchez batting 43% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .987 OPS versus righties. Josiah Gray pitching his worst ball versus lefty batters, giving up a .998 OPS versus lefties. And Jesus Sanchez is 2 for 5 with a 1.1 OPS versus Gray, $3,300 FanDuel salary, $300 more on DraftKings, averaging 12 fantasy points per game on the season, and a batting average of .310. So everything looks good here for Jesus Sanchez here versus Josiah Gray.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to DraftDashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this MLB slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.